Welcome, everyone, to episode 28 of the What Sales and Marketing Got to Do with It podcast. My name is Gemma Adair, founder and principal marketing consultant at Riata Consultancy. The podcast aims to delve deep into the minds of sales and marketing industry leaders, uncovering what keeps them up at night, what drives their passion, and how they execute successful strategies in both their personal and professional lives. I'm delighted to welcome Roisin Rivers, a corporate marketing manager at Navex, a leading global provider of risk and compliance solutions. Great to have you, Roisin.
Thank you so much, Gemma, for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to this.
Perfect. No, that's great. And without further ado, please introduce yourself and what you do.
So I'm Roisin Rivers. I'm the corporate marketing manager at Navex. I've been here for just over 5 years now. But my background has been predominantly in the IT sector, looking after kind of sales, marketing support areas. But in the last I would say probably 11 years, it's been focusing on the in-person event side of things. So my role here at Navex is very much about the in-person events within Europe and the UK. We have another team who look after the US side of things. But that could kind of go from anything from a big trade show to an exhibition to, a small breakfast briefing, to kind of events that we create ourselves. So it's a huge range of different areas that we kind of dive into, but the background really for Navex is risk and compliance software. So we're supporting any kind of compliance function within the business, so that looking at hotlines, so speak up solutions, third party risk, policy and procedure management, code of conduct, all kinds of varying things. But there's been a lot in the media this year on kind of compliance risks. We've had the post office scandals and things like that. That's really where our technology is there to support organizations to allow people to speak up and to eliminate that potential risk that the business might have. So looking at organizational culture. But yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell.
And just out of curiosity, when and where did your marketing events journey begin? Take us back.
Yeah, so it was quite a few years ago now. And I worked for a company called Reed Exhibitions, which is one of the largest exhibition providers. And at the time, we were doing big events out of what was then Earls Court and Olympia. And we'd do big trade shows. The one I worked on was the London Book Fair. And it would just open my eyes to kind of what the world of work could be beyond what we kind of consider it. So we consider kind of, you go to an office, switch on a computer, but actually exhibitions are kind of a different world all by themselves. And it really opened my eyes, and I kind of got a buzz for it and a feel for it. And I really enjoyed that part of my work. And I left there because my daughter was quite young, and exhibitions events are a huge kind of input of your time, and your work-life balance can get affected a little bit. And so I started working for an IT security company for a while, with the view of helping them with some of the event side of things, but more so office management, fielding support tickets, shipping servers, all kinds of different things, but organising QBRs, away days, very involved role. And then I moved on to kind of more of a sales support role, which then led into really where my marketing career kicked off, where I was marketing exec for a while before moving into where we met at K2, where I started working in the events piece, focusing on that completely at that point in time. And that really has continued ever since. And I've done a mixture of roles where I've been working at Microsoft, have a reactor space for upcoming startup companies. So I worked in that event space for a while, but also on the other side of being kind of within the IT security space and doing global events. So it's been quite varied, but it's been a lot of fun over the years as well. And, as you know, you get to meet a lot of great people when you do that type of work.
Definitely, yes. It's brilliant. There's a great mix there, you know, throughout the sort of tech space, which is really cool. Um, have you faced challenges in your marketing career, and what were they, and how did you overcome them?
I think it depends. There's been lots of different challenges in different companies. I think budgets are always a big one for all of us, and you adapt and you find different ways and you rescale and you do things in a different way. I think one of the biggest challenges, which I see in every company I've worked at, is personnel changes. So
Mm,
as teams grow and develop, or there's acquisitions, or there's downsizing, or management restructures, that always affects the day to day because your role may not change, but the way you have to do it does. So
yeah.
the processes that you follow may be different. So it may be that one day you just do everything yourself and then you can structure your day. I know what I've got to do. I'll do this, I'll do that, and that's fine. But that might change the next month. There may be new management in place and they want the processes changed. They bring more people in to help make the business better, more efficient, less pressure on one person. But you then have to be able to understand the timings for when you do things. And if you're having to bring in another team
Mm,
to kind of support you, whether it may be somebody just putting your event on a website. If you before were able to just go in and edit, that was one step. But if you've then got to raise a ticket for that to go to somebody else to do, for them to do it, and you have to be thinking about their timelines rather than just your own. So it's really adapting to that changing workforce, changing dynamics within teams. And to overcome it, it's just learning and adapting and taking a step back and going, well, this is inconveniencing me for a short while, but in the
mm,
long term, we're all going to benefit because it'll be an easier process. And, if somebody else has to step in and take over when you're on holiday or if you're on leave or, you change jobs, it's not having to start from scratch again. There's a process in place and somebody else knows what to do.
definitely. I think you know yourself, marketing has moving dynamics constantly,
Mm.
right? And then just an event in itself has various factors, different elements to it. And I think when you commit to actually doing an event, paying for the sponsorship, it has to happen regardless of someone being away or someone leaves the business, or it's kind of like, as you as the sort of lead on that event, you have to make it happen by just whatever means, necessarily resources that you've got to hand. So I think a lot of the time teams and C-suite, they underestimate it's not just about rolling up and rocking up with a
Yep.
booth or a stand. There's so many different various factors which go into it. You almost have to re-engineer, um, the whole kind of from the time that event starts to when by the time you've planned it to the very start. So there's a lot of different moving parts to that, and I think it's definitely underestimated.
I very much so. And I think there is a couple of elements to that. And if you are doing an in-person event, it's going to be one of the most expensive outlays that your company will put out
Yep.
in any activity that they do. And when it is in person, it's very much the shop window to your organization. So you are showing people who may have never heard of you, never seen you, don't even know that you exist. You want to show them in your best light. So you want to be there kind of
Mm.
in your Sunday best. You don't want to be kind of, as I've heard a few times in my career, oh, it's just an event, just rock up with a couple of pull up banners and off you go. And You're like, well, you can do that, but are you going to get the best out of that event?
Mm,
Probably not. You want to book in as early as you can, get the promotional time, and really let people know you're going to be there. And that's something that I think does get very much underestimated. And you can't make people come and speak to you at an event, but the more you can do, you don't know who's actually looking at you while you're there. And, in recent years, I've had kind of back to back events where I've seen different people from the same companies and they've said, we know your name. Somebody came back to the office with one of your brochures last week. Oh, now I'd like to come and talk to you because
mm.
I've got an idea of who you are. So maybe that first person wasn't the right one, but they've taken that information and passed it to the correct person in their office. So if you show yourself as a kind of a booth where someone's sat there on their laptop, on their phone, talking to each other and not really focusing on the room, that will get noticed.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So what does a day in the life of Roisin look like? Take us through your day from morning till afternoon. What does that look like? Take us through your day.
So it very much varies on where we are and what's happening. So if it's a non-event day, it will be kind of checking on Teams, checking on emails, seeing if there's any deliverables required for any activities, if I need to connect with any of our teams on different projects. On an event day, though, that will be very different. That will be a very early start normally. I'm not a morning person, so it's an event day because I will be the first person up and the first person at the venue,
Yeah.
just checking everything is there and we're ready to go, and everything is in place that it's been delivered, and just finding out where people need to go. I've lost count of the amount of events I've been to where the staff turn up and ask me where the toilet is. There's just so it's kind of being that navigator and being that kind of guide on site of what needs to happen. Um, and then towards the end of the event, it will be any kind of networking time. There's usually some networking reception at the end, and it's just kind of helping to make sure that everything is still in place. We've still got information if people need it or want it, and any leads that we may have captured on the day are
Yeah.
starting to get filtered into the system. But I think on an ordinary day, you might have meetings with sales, you might have meetings with other members of your team, maybe the SC team if they are involved in the event, our business development reps so that they know how to follow up when we have events happening. It does really vary depending on the time of year. There will be some months where it's just frantic and I could be in an airport traveling event to event, and other times you'll be sitting there thinking, right, planning, what do we need to order, what have we got in stock. So yeah, it's great. There's so much variety. I mean, you'll
Mm.
never be bored.
Definitely, definitely. And you've just mentioned there as well, like with like flights, throw in there like accommodation,
Mm.
that's something as well that tends to kind of happen when you're planning events or you're planning people, stakeholders to be there and stuff. You would sort of, if need be, organize the sort of flights and accommodation, or at least kind of put that together as your kind of event brief and pack
Yeah,
everyone.
I think that's kind of where it is. It's making sure that even when you put all the information together and you send it out, you still have that one-to-one call with the people you want to be there, so they have that information. They know where they should book. I mean, I would always, if it's possible, give them a choice because people have a preference
Definitely.
over where they would like to stay. But if it means that where they're going to stay is going to take them a long time to get to the venue, then sometimes it's better to kind of push them towards somewhere that is a little bit closer, if not in the venue where the event's going to be held.
Definitely. Um, my next question tends to focus one on sort of marketing, sort of in general. What do people like the most, or what do they like the least? Um, and the one thing that I would ask you is, in terms of events, what do you like the most and why? That would be my first question.
I really enjoy getting out there and seeing our customers and prospects and talking to them and really understanding what it is they need, what they're doing, because I think you can very much get caught up in what the business is talking about, what the business thinks it needs. And actually, when you get out there and you listen to what people are saying, that may not always connect. And it's really about, you know, getting to know who are the people you need to talk to, because who you think the decision maker is, it may actually be the influencer to that decision maker. So decision makers, I will go with your recommendation because I trust you as my colleague. So
Mm.
actually not getting too weighed down with what we assume as marketeers are who we need to target, but actually finding out who will influence that final decision maker. But also hearing the challenges they've got. Are we actually meeting their needs? Are we missing, very obvious thing that, we just assume they know? And I've heard that quite a few times from our customer base where they don't know about some of our other offerings because it's
Mm.
a system that's been brought in a long time ago, maybe by somebody else. And the new people come in and they're not looking at us. They may not even deal with us on a day to day, but they're like, oh, we didn't know you did that. We've been looking for that. But you're
Yeah,
already in as a provider. So that could be helpful to us.
definitely. An event is intel as well, right? Because
Mm,
you're not only finding about prospective customers, existing customers might attend that event, but also the competitors that surround you, like the other sponsors that are attending, plus also the speakers
mm,
that are at that event as well. So I think it's not just ROI in terms of exhibiting, sponsoring the event. There's the extended ROI and intel that you can get from the event. And also just making connections and building that relationship with the organizers themselves. I think, yeah, very much so being proactive and just kind of, so there's a little
yeah.
additional benefits. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think, you're right. The competitor side of things, most IT industries are quite small. Somebody who may be your competitor one day, maybe you get acquired by them or they acquire you. So it's kind
Good
of,
point.
not being too distant, but actually kind of understanding who does what, how close it is, and
Exactly.
may you one day end up working with those people. And sometimes, I've been at events where we've had staff from competitors come over and go, "Oh, we've worked with you in the past, or I've worked with you in the past," and there's no animosity there. It's a small industry and people move around and you still kind of stay quite connected.
Definitely. And my next question would be, what do you like the least and why about
I
an
think
event?
think sometimes it's just when you put all the work into it and sometimes you don't get the results you were kind of hoping for.
Yeah.
You go into it with high expectations and you're like, found the right event, the right location, the right job titles, we've got everything, all the boxes ticked. And then you come away from it and there's not the same kind of traction that you had hoped for. And there's nothing you can do about that. You can't control what people want to do on the day at that event.
Mm.
And I think sometimes the measurement of success doesn't always filter through very well within our systems. We have a very strict methodology of, well, that's a high value lead, that's this, or that's that. And then it goes in, and sometimes, it can take a bit longer than that one event. It might be that that person's picked up your brochure, they've gone back, they've done their due diligence, they've listened to a few webinars, they've gone to other events, but they didn't speak to you at that event, so you didn't log them.
Mm.
So it would seem that that event wasn't as successful as you thought it could be, but actually, long term, it may have been. You
Yes.
just can't get that It's a bit of a game to play.
It's true. And I think also different stakeholders have different feedback or, post that event. Some stakeholders might think it was absolutely brilliant, and then others might think, oh, I don't think it was worth our while. So it really does vary, doesn't it? What
And I
happened?
think, yeah, looking at the numbers as well, and to our earlier point of when staffing changes,
Mm,
that you come back in and you look at an event, you go, oh, wasn't that good? The numbers on the system say that they're not very good. And then someone else will come along, I went to that event, closed a great
mm,
deal off that. Yeah, but it doesn't show in the system. Oh no, we didn't process it that way.
mm,
So if the process isn't followed accurately,
exactly.
one person will go, oh, it was an amazing event. But the person who's going to sign off for that event again will look at the numbers, go, we're not doing it.
We're
There
not
was,
doing it again.
we didn't get any traction on it. So it's really very subjective as well about that personal opinion. I've had some teams go to events, go, oh, it's great. And I'm like, well, the numbers aren't showing it. Oh, well, I've got all my contacts in LinkedIn. I've made personal connections. And you're like, that's lovely. I'm really pleased that you've made some nice connections. But from a business standpoint, that doesn't help.
It's I think it's a very, very relevant point that you brought up, because if the information is not in the system, then you can't pull the data for future reference. You can't go back to management and say, hey, this event's done really well. It's generated so many leads, and then it's converted into ops. And I think, um, you know, if I don't know, if a salesperson wanted to go to an event again, then you could say, well, okay, I can see the data in the system. I can go back to management and they'll see clearly that it's a good initiative, a good event to attend. So, but if it's not there, then you've got nothing to go back on. It's basically like air, right?
Yeah.
From your experience, what do you think the misconceptions do people have about marketing or events? What do you think? Either or, yeah.
I think it's seen a little bit as a quick fix, and it's not. It's the marketing is the way of putting your brand out there in the marketplace. It's about awareness, it's about educating people on what's possible and what you can do. We very much focus a lot on thought leadership. We want the audience to know that we're experts in our field and that they can trust the information we give them. From the business perspective, marketing is there to make sales happen. And yes, it is to a point, but actually, what we're doing is helping people and pushing them towards sales. But actually, the sales team have to make that side of it work. And I think sometimes if numbers aren't quite where they need to be, it's like, well, I don't get any marketing support
Mm,
because, you can only do so much and you can't do something for everybody. It's
yes.
just not possible unless you're in a very, very small team or you've got lots and lots of money and you're a big, huge corporation. And
Yeah, budget.
even then, it's not always possible. But
Yeah.
I think it's about understanding that, marketing is opening the doors. It's showing that your company exists, what you offer, why you should be trusted, and what problems you can solve for. But the
Mm,
sales team's part of that is to come in and kind of connect the dots and kind of say, okay, well, what are you looking to solve? Okay, this is how we can solve it. Marketing can't really do that part. So it's, actually making sure that connection is understood and recognized.
definitely. Which brings me to the next question, which ties in so nicely with this one is I'm a firm believer of marketing and sales alignment. What's your thoughts on that? I think you've touched on it in
I
your
think what I have seen in recent years is that when sales really understand what marketing can offer and communicate well and work together, they end up being very successful.
mm,
But I think
definitely.
there's often a case where, a salesperson may feel, oh, I don't really get any support from marketing, so I've got to do it myself. And they don't necessarily do their research to see what marketing support is there for them. So,
Mm,
there'll be a lot of investment on content, on materials, on webinars, on really useful resources that sales can share with their prospects, and also making use of kind of customer references,
yeah,
having a really strong reference program. And
definitely.
sometimes you kind of get in some sales teams that business card getting passed around everyone, or just use that person. Whereas actually look internally at who's given their permission to do this, who has said, hands up, come to me, I'm happy to give you a reference. And in that context, they'll do better because they'll have somebody who is ready, willing, and able to share a really good experience, opposed to that business card who gets called up every 5 minutes because it's the same name being put out there.
Mm,
But
yeah,
I
no,
think, yeah, the two together, when they work collaboratively, can do really well.
definitely. I definitely agree with that. And I think that's where some organizations and some teams are missing a trick, where there's still a barrier to that, of that whole kind of collaboration, and essentially, they're working together to achieve, the bottom line, business objectives and goals and so on. So, they need to work together. It'll be amazing if they do that, if they continue to do that. How do you stay up to date with what's happening in the market?
So it's a mixture. I'm not really looking at kind of what's happening in events because I'm living and breathing them. I
Yeah.
think it's more kind of the industry side of what we are trying to sell. So
Yeah.
we have partnerships with organizations that work in the area and attending some of their events, speaking to them. And actually, when I attend events, going and listening to some of the sessions, because for me, it's very much about the content that's coming out to really understand where we're best placed to be, and
Mm,
what should we be speaking about that really gets people going and that shows their interest. And I create some of our events from scratch, and for me it's really very much about making sure that the content is what people are looking for. Are they going to get something that when they arrive on site, they learn something new, they have something to take actionably back to the office to talk to their colleagues about. And I try to make sure they have workshop networking times. So they'll be in groups of tables, they'll get to talk to their peers and colleagues who are in different industries, maybe different job titles, but all facing the same challenges. And then they really kind of get that opportunity to have that conversation. It's not over a glass of wine, it's actually sitting down talking through what they struggle with or what they found to work for them that they could
mm,
share with everybody. And I think it's about getting that balance and understanding kind of what works for people, what doesn't work for people. And I think we've gone past the days of having an event or an exhibition where it's just we'll stand at a booth and hope someone will come and talk to us. We've
definitely.
got to go beyond that, because that's usually when people are kind of ready to have a purchasing conversation. And if they're like, no, I just wanted to listen to that session, you gotta go a little bit beyond that.
That makes sense. I think with me, that's why I love events. Like, no one, if anyone looks in my direction, I'm on them at a booth. And just kind of like engage, make that contact, because I think, yourself, some people quite confidently, they're proactive, they'll come to the booth, no problem at all. Some people, they'll look over, they'll read the branding or the strap line, and they're like, oh, I'm curious to know who they are. And sometimes they need a bit of encouragement to come over to the booth and kind of have.
Yeah, I've always kind of been a big believer in having kind of video on the booth as well
Mm,
that kind of
definitely.
details what you do. So somebody on the other side of the room who maybe wants to know a bit more but doesn't want to come and talk to you just yet can get kind of a feel for what you do and then come over and ask the questions that they want to ask. But it's one of those things. It's when you go to an event, you don't know the people in the room, you're walking through and you're kind of like, this is awkward. How do we do this? And some people are great. They'll really make people feel welcome, and other times it's that kind of bit of shyness on both sides.
Definitely. And it's not about that kind of immediate sell, it's
Mm.
about to what you alluded to before about finding out what their challenges are, what solution do they want, like try and understand them and their business and kind of get to know them more rather than kind of selling them a product or
Well,
service from the
this
get-go.
is what I always say to our teams before I go. I was like, don't go straight into when the question will always be, what does your company do?
Yeah.
I said, don't answer that. Ask them what brought them there
Yeah.
that day. What is their role? What are they looking to achieve? What challenges do they have? How can we help? And then you can tailor your response of what the company does based on how we can support the
Hmm.
challenge they've got. Because we're fortunate as a company, we've got lots of solutions, but we could hit them with the wrong one and
Yeah,
that's it. They're like, oh, you only do that. That's not what I wanted. You
exactly.
need to know what brought them there. And sometimes it will be, I just wanted your water bottle. I like the water bottle.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine. But what else brought you here today? And actually that conversation can lead to something when it's
Yeah.
just very informal and laid back.
Definitely. No, I agree. I agree. Um, just in terms of advice, if a younger person or perhaps someone that is a professional that's many years sort of experience behind them and they wanted to kind of get into marketing, what advice would you give them? Either a younger person or someone that's a an older professional perhaps that's had quite a few years experience.
I would suggest looking at some of the successful brands out there and what has made them unique.
Hmm.
What do they do that makes them a brand that people want or aspire to be?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then look at how they do that. What tactics have they employed for somebody to go, I have to have that brand, and look at maybe what they do with their social media, what's on LinkedIn, uh,
Mm,
what's out in the press, and what reviews do they get? What are people saying about them on a day to day? And I think that really kind of helps you to kind of figure out what works well,
yeah,
because if they can do a lot of that, even with bad publicity, and they can
yeah,
still be seen as a brand that people want to be associated with or want to buy, that kind of, I think, helps set the scene.
definitely, definitely. And my next question would be, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I never really had a clear out view of what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work in an office. And then when I worked in an office, I was like, well, this is great. But actually, I miss kind of being out of the office as well.
Yeah,
And when I discovered the world of events, I was like, well, this is the best of both, because
it sure
you
is.
have your office-based work that you have to do, but you get to go and view venues.
Mm,
You do site visits, you get to meet people, you get to go and stay in hotels, you get to travel a bit. I'm Travel sounds very glamorous, but you tend to just go in, do the event, and come straight home again. So you don't necessarily get to see anything, but it's still nice to kind of have that opportunity to, you know, remove yourself from kind of the constant of one particular way of working. You get to mix it up. And I think one of the things I really enjoy about where I've come to be is that I get to meet so many people across our company when we do the events, because there's different people that come in who I wouldn't normally meet, see, or connect with other than at an event. And that's really when you get to talk and get to know your colleagues, because
Mm,
you're away from, they're not, entirely absorbed in what they have to do. They've actually got a bit of clear headspace, where you're kind of waiting for an event to start, or it's, having dinner at the end of the day together, and just getting to know the people you're working with who are not necessarily direct colleagues within your team.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Which brings me to the question of, events are extremely, from one minute you might be in Europe, you might be in the UK, you might be, God knows, in the US, or, wherever it may be. Work-life balance. How do you balance your personal life to your professional life?
I'd say that's still probably work in progress.
Yeah.
Because busy times it becomes all encompassing, and I think it's just really important when we have the quieter periods, which you do with events. You've got the summer and you've got the period over Christmas, to really take the time then to
Mm,
see family and friends, to travel and to get some relaxation. And then in the busy times, just to make sure when those weekends come along that you have activities that are going to help you decompress and take your mind off of the crazies that you've just had. And, for me, I love getting out in the garden. I just find that really helps me kind of relax and unwind and forget about everything.
yeah.
But sometimes it may just be going out for the day, going and exploring, going and seeing a castle or seeing the coastline or something, just
Yeah.
completely detaching from the day to day. But as I say, it's work in progress, because, with events, it becomes a bit contagious and you get a bit excited, and then you're like, oh, can we do another one and another one? And then before you know it, and this is when it's the quiet period, you're like, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. And then before you're like,
Make it happen.
yeah, you're in the midst of it and you're like, why am I doing 5 events in one week? This is mental.
You're like, this is the norm. This is what I do. Where other people be like, oh my gosh, where's the bandwidth? How do
Yeah,
you have the bandwidth to do all of
I
it?
have been asked that recently.
It doesn't surprise me. Yeah. Yeah. Does not surprise me. Um, what is your passion in life and what drives you?
I think it's just at kind of age I'm at now. It's about contentness. It's about, when it comes to work, satisfaction that you've done a good job and you have, exceeded expectations. You can't please everybody, but as long as you feel that you've done the best you can. But in terms of a personal side of things, it's making sure that you're making time for your loved ones, for your friends, and it's never going to be enough time ever, but you will feel that you can do the best you can. And, it's, our day-to-day life is can be challenging, I think, but having the pandemic kind of helped us a little bit to kind of reevaluate how we
Yes,
work and what we do.
definitely. Is there somebody that inspires you, dead or alive?
I would say not one particular person, but, friends and colleagues, or ex-colleagues that matter, who have really gone out there and made success for themselves.
Mhm.
And they've kind of taken a very simple concept, run with it, and, you know, escaped that kind of corporate life, but made their own successful businesses and balance that with family life, with commitments. And I just kind of am immensely proud of what they achieve and what they do, because I don't think I could do that. And I'm not sure I'm brave enough to do that. But I really admire anyone who can kind of take an idea and really make it look easy and just grow with it.
Mm. No, that's pretty awesome, isn't it? Just to kind of take that leap of faith and just kind of trust. I think it's a trusting in the process, trusting in yourself to do that. And I think it goes back to that whole why, what's your why and why you're doing it, and just being true to you and what you want to do. Because as you
And
know,
yeah,
there's only one life. So it's, yeah, it's,
yeah, and I think just having faith that
Mm.
you are good enough that you can make it happen. And I've seen that quite a few times, and I do very much admire, the people who have done that, who've been able to just take that leap of faith, both in themselves and in their futures.
yeah, no, it's pretty cool. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
5 years, I would hope that I've still got the stamina to keep doing events. But I think I really enjoy the type of work I'm in at the moment, the industry I'm working in. I feel like we're doing a lot for the common good. It's You can work in any kind of IT structure or firm, but actually feeling that you're contributing to something that will improve people's work life, their culture, that they feel that they have a safe environment to work in. And, I'm not directly impacting that, but just being a little cog in a bigger wheel of that just makes me feel good about myself, and that, I'm doing good things. And hopefully in 5 years, I will still be doing this, and, maybe doing more, getting out further into the world to do it.
Nice, nice. Which brings me to my next question. What do you want to be remembered by? And you've probably touched upon it briefly before, but what do you want to be remembered by?
I think just making that impact, that, not being somebody who is task driven or difficult to work with. Some people might say I have been, but actually making a difference, and, helping other people to achieve success too, whether that's my sales colleagues or my marketing colleagues, by the work that I do that has helped us as a team to grow and develop, and being that person that people could come and ask questions of and say, I'm really not sure, how's this been done in the past? I've been at this company over 5 years, and that does have a bit of tenure with it, because, things have changed a lot
Mm,
in that time, and, somebody coming over and saying, well, what should I do? And I say, well, actually, maybe try this, maybe try that, given that experience. And I think the more experience we get, being able to share that with others and help them to see things through maybe a different set of eyes.
definitely. And if they are perhaps younger or just kind of coming into their careers early on, they could also give us some insight and so on. So it kind of works both ways, doesn't it?
I
Um,
think that's
so
right. I think there's a sharing of knowledge, information. Trends are changing. Things that used to work 5, 10 years ago are not the same
yeah,
now. You look at events as an example. You would never have used your phone with an app to check the schedule of the event, and
exactly.
being able to connect with people pre-event, you know, unless you meet them face to face. There's lots of changes that are happening, and it's fast paced, and, you know, the way social media works is very different. And I think, there's a generational gap in terms of how we each use it and what we use it for. And I think we can all learn from one another.
Definitely, definitely. If you had the chance to be a superhero or someone with superpowers, who would you be and why, or what superpowers would you have and why?
Oh, it's a tough one. Do you know what always comes to mind when it's superheroes is Batman, and I think it's because of the Batcave. I love the idea of the Batcave, and, you know, I think in this context that's quite a nice analogy for work-life balance, because he goes into the Batcave, that's where the work gets done, goes back in the house, and you change to a different person.
Yeah,
That's your home personality and it's your work
yeah,
personality. But, yeah, I think obviously kind of the fast car and the big mansion kind of comes to mind for that.
No, it's a good one to choose. Yeah, yeah, Batman and the cave and so on. If you had to ask the audience a question, what would that question be?
Oh, it's a difficult one. Um, I suppose what would their expectations or what would they like to see an outcome for what would be successful as an event for them? What would make them kind of come away and go, that really worked. That's great. I would like to go again. I want to tell people about it. I think that's kind of from my background. That's probably what I would ask.
Perfect. No, that's a good question. Very good question. Because I think there'd be the feedback would vary, right? Depending
Mm,
upon, the person and their experience with events and what their needs are and so on, what interests them. So it's a
yeah.
very good question to ask. Do you have any final words that you would like to share um, from the podcast today?
I think we've touched on the sales and marketing collaboration, but I think in general, with any organization, doesn't matter its size or what you do, communication is key. As long as everybody knows what you're trying to achieve, what your messaging is, um, what's going on, what you're doing. Nobody likes to kind of look or feel like they're not sure what's going on or what's happening. So, making sure areas of communication are always kept up to date and finding the right way to do it.
Definitely. I think that's a great finish to the podcast today, and it's been an absolute pleasure. You're just an events rock star by the sound of it from all of what you've just taken us through today on the podcast. Like, yeah, bandwidth. I think that's the rest of, yeah. It's just crazy just how much you cover and never a dull moment from one day to the next. But thank you so much, Roisin, for being on the podcast today, and just keep doing what you're doing. It's great.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Roisin. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.